And hello, Bills Mafia. That red light is on. The Bills Polo is also on for very good reason because your Buffalo Bills are once again, for the fourth time in a row, AFC East Division champions as they defeat the Miami Dolphins to the tune of 21-14 in Miami to secure their fourth division title in a row. And I am excited not only for that, but for my guest, Cover One's very own Uber Hansen, to be joining me tonight as we recap that game, the regular season that was absolutely insane, as well as preview this upcoming matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the wild card round in Orchard Park. I hope you're all ready, and thank you all so much for being here on this week's episode of Under Review. Let's go back to the playoffs.
Previous play will go under review.
Hello again, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on this Tuesday night, rainy one here in New York City. I am so appreciative of all of you for tuning in. If you could please do me a favor and drop a like on this video as you join us as we get on with this discussion. I would truly appreciate it. Uber Hansen, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you joining me as always. How are you doing? How you feeling?
Yeah, man. Just wonderful. I mean, the Bills stealing the division is always a good feeling. 4 division titles in a row is something I never thought I would ever say in my life. I even questioned if we'd ever win 1 division title in my cognitive reality. And just to throw a little stat out there to start this, the Bills have won 4 division titles in a row. The New York Jets have won 4 division titles in their franchise history. So don't take this for granted. This is really, not every other team gets to live like this. Hopefully they can go on a run and get that first Super Bowl.
I'm certainly hoping so too, and I really did not know about that stat with the Jets, but I try to be as neutral as I can and respect all fan bases, but I also don't get deliberately mad when the Jets, Dolphins, or Patriots catch astray on the show. I think it's really funny, and that is a hilarious stat. So better luck next year, New York Jets, offseason champions according to many. But yes, it was really the outcome you wanted for what was an absolutely mind-numbing, roller coaster, emotional, turbulent season, whatever word you want to call it. It was absolutely insane to see the highs and lows that this Bills team went through this season, yet somehow in the final week at the buzzer, get the division. And not even just get the division, but steal it from Miami, who really was in control of it for many weeks up until a Will Levis comeback I don't even remember how many weeks ago it was. I think 4 weeks ago, where they just completely drop a game they had in their hand twice that ultimately proves to be the difference in the Bills being the wild card and going in as the potential 6th or 7th seed and now division champions. And it is truly amazing, given all the discourse we've had over Ken Dorsey, over Sean McDermott, over the team letting us down in close games, to now being champions with a home playoff game coming up. So I want to ask you, just give me your thoughts on 2023. I mean, there's so much that could be said, but I really am curious how you feel about this season as we close the book on it and head into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think roller coaster is the best, word to describe it, right? And I think it even starts before technically the 2022 season was over. It starts at the very beginning of 2023 when we have the whole Damar Hamlin incident happen, and that's the way the Bills season, inevitably kind of ends. It saps all the energy out of them. They go into that Bengals game. So the Bengals outplayed them, deserve credit for that win, but the Bills just really had no juice. And then this entire offseason, it was kind of like, can they get that mojo back? Can they find their groove? And then we had to deal with all these ridiculous narratives, and whether that be Stephon Diggs wants out of Buffalo because he can't deal with the head coach, Stephon Diggs wants out of Buffalo because he doesn't like Josh Allen, or Stephon Diggs wants out of Buffalo because the strip clubs aren't good enough. That was just a constant narrative all off season. And then you go in the season and the roller coaster just continues, right? For the first, 3/4 of the year where it's loss, win, essentially. They kind of had a nice little 3-game win streak to start, but for the most part, it was just win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. And they were a lot of heartbreaking losses in games the Bills shouldn't have lost. Every single game they lost this year, yet again by one score, which was the same thing that happened last year. I think that bye week. So here's one thought I have: that Eagles loss might have been better for the Bills than if they won that game. Right? They lose that game, they go in the bye week, and now they know we're in the playoffs right now. Starting in that Chiefs game, this is a playoff game. That Cowboys game, playoff game. Chargers game, playoff game. Patriots game, playoff game. Dolphins game, playoff. Like, the Bills have been in the playoffs since the beginning of December. And I think that was really important for their mentality. It's a win at all costs and just make sure you can kind of advance. And I think that we might be out of that roller coaster now, going into the most important part of the season, which is the postseason.
Well, I hope we're out of the roller coaster, but as Bills fans, we know we are never out of the roller coaster. But I will say that I'm glad you bring up the Eagles game, because that is the turning point. You saw them play really competitive football against, at the time, was a team that was 10-2. You knew what you had your work cut out for you. Their, defense was exposed a little bit, but at the time it seemed more like they could fix it versus, wow, they're really this bad. And they still had a great pass rush. Their offense was productive. You had to worry about DeAndre Swift, all of these factors. And you go into Philly and you put up a great game, but unfortunately, things just don't go your way. And if you want to call that a McDermott problem, if you want to call that divine intervention, whatever it may be, because of the Brown potential fumble, the 59-yard field goal or 57-yard field goal that got made, it was a game that was almost like a slap in the face to the Bills going into the bye week. And with a taste that bad in your mouth, that's what you need, in a way, in essence, to turn it around and come out of the bye and play your best ball, because you know what lies ahead of you. And this is kind of why teams like the late bye week, and why I like the late bye week, is because we've seen the Bills get an earlier one past few years where, okay, cool, you get a break, you get your players back, but now the rest of the season is a gauntlet. There's no breaks unless you get a mini bye at some point mixed in your schedule. This year, that bye came at a crucial period where you needed to course correct, reflect. You just made Joe Brady your interim OC. Now he has to make his tweaks, and he has an extra week to do so. Sean McDermott has to fix things with his defense. You need these two things to get right as you go into a crucial stretch where you're not out, but you have 13% chance of making the playoffs. And they do exactly that. They go into Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs. Then the following week, they absolutely demolish Dallas. You get your wins against the Chargers and Patriots, and they were ugly wins. And then you go into Miami, the biggest game of the year, and back against the wall. You look terrible to start, but you figure it out, and you end up winning. And that is just something that I think you got to tip your cap to Sean McDermott. And I have been on this show and criticized him. I know you all know that, but I have criticized him. I will give him his credit, because he came in a dire situation and led the team to 5 straight wins when they needed it, got it done, and here they are as champions. But I do have to ask you, just like, when they were 5-5, did you think it was possible? I see we got a lot of people in the comment section. I'll bring some up, but some people saying they actually still had full faith that they were going to win the East and everything. When we got to the point where we lost to the Broncos, which I think was the true low point of the year, did you think it was going to happen?
Yeah, I didn't think the division was going to happen at that point. It just was it seemed like too much to overcome with the way the Dolphins were playing. We needed a lot of help from the Dolphins, which we actually got. That being said, I still had faith they were going to make the playoffs. I just looked at a team that was too talented with a quarterback like Josh Allen to not believe they're going to make the playoffs. And one thing that really stood out to me was after that Jaguars game, right? So at this point now, they've lost Trey White, they've lost Matt Milano, they've lost Daquan Jones. A narrative that I tried to push was that it takes time to readjust your defense, right? You're trying to basically fill 3 holes at every single level. It's not as easy as it is in Madden, where you can just be like, oh, I'll sign this free agent that's ranked, like an 82, and I can plug him into Daquan Jones' spot, and it's not really a loss at all. It doesn't work that way in the real NFL. So I think Sean McDermott essentially needed to bide his time until he could really get the adjustments made on the defensive side of the ball, where the Bills could kind of go on a run. And it took that bye week. It took surviving until that bye week, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't pretty. Hell, they went 4-2, or what is it? After the Jaguars game, they went 3-4 over the next 7 games until they got to that bye week, and then they go on a 5-game stretch. And the defense really was the most important part of that 5-game stretch, right? The Chargers and Patriots games, like you said, were ugly. They weren't great games, and actually Easton Stick and Bailey Zappi in the second half had okay games against the Bills. But where the Bills defense really shined was against Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, and Tua Tagovailoa, which is a lot to do with Sean McDermott finally finding a way to get that defense rolling. Rasul Douglas, a massive part of that. Tyrell Dodson, a massive part of that. And now Daquan Jones is back. Like, the Bills have some health concerns going into the playoffs after this Dolphins game, but I think getting a little bit healthier, giving Sean McDermott time to really get into that defense and dive into adjusting his scheme to account for losing Matt Milano and Trey White. Like, those aren't just, no-name guys. Matt Milano's the equivalent of the 49ers losing Fred Warner. I can't say that enough. If the 49ers lose Fred Warner, their defense isn't nearly as good as it is now. The Bills lost Matt Milano, and they still, I believe, they're probably borderline top 10 defense by DVOA. I haven't checked the updated DVOA.
I could tell you right now, they are currently sitting at 12.
Yeah,
12 overall.
If you told me in week 6, so at that point, right, our 3 guys are out of the lineup. If you told me the Bills finished the season as the 12th ranked defense, I would have signed up for it right away. I wouldn't have really believed you. I was hoping more for 16, 17, 18. For them to be the 12th ranked defense with all the issues they had, man, that's hats off to Sean McDermott, who did it. Just an incredible job.
Full credit. I love this comment. Uber, is your thermostat set at 50 degrees?
It is really cold in here. It's really cold in here right now.
But no, I completely agree. And this is what I mean is I will stand on the fact that I had said these things about McDermott and how I think that it was time, should he continue this trend of the Bills collapsing in crucial moments and kind of overcompensating for his injuries, that I was comfortable with them actually moving on from him. But, a 5-0 run in a crucial part of the year, showing us that your defense can improve, because since the bye week, they were the number 1 in dropback EPA defense. Those are metrics that prove to me that you're figuring it out, you're course correcting, and now all of a sudden you have a viable chance for playoffs and division, and you get it. And I think because of that, my stance has softened. I am much more in camp that Sean McDermott figured it out and he made things work. But we also have to remember too, a big part of the reason why this got figured out was because, one, again, when you have Jordan Phillips filling in for Daquan Jones, it's not going to work right away. There's obviously a huge difference in play. Things drop off. Things have to be adjusted. And you unfortunately went against a Patriots team that knew that and attacked you, because Belichick does that. But as time went on, you saw an adjustment from certain players that had to fill their roles, like Jordan Phillips, like a Tim Settle, and then like Tyrell Dodson, who also had to do the same thing and ended up playing really good ball down the stretch and somehow ended up being one of the top graded linebackers in the league. Tells you about grades. But then you see, the urgency from the team that despite them being at 500 or, teetering around it, they're still going to make moves at the deadline. And they go and bring Rasul Douglas, who ends up being an astronomical part of why this turned around because of how good his play was. And I just have to tip my cap again to McDermott being the guys that are running this team, the organization, because when their backs are against the wall, they didn't really panic. They stayed the course. They did what they had to do. And here you are talking about the fact that our defense sniffs the top 10 again when we didn't think it would. And we were fine with it being in that, periphery at the very least. And all of our offensive metrics, while they were still good in the Ken Dorsey era, stayed good and also saw tangible results from Joe Brady's pivots in this offensive scheme. And Uber, I'm going to ask you more about him. I mean, since that transition from Dorsey to Brady, and now that we're at the end of the year, are you pleased with the result? Do you think there's more left on the bone? How are you feeling about Joe Brady going into the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, I think Joe Brady's been an upgrade over Ken Dorsey. I think that's pretty obvious to a point. I don't think it's been as perfect as a lot of fans are suggesting it is. I still see some issues with the offense. Things just aren't clicking at points, and some play calls are still a little odd. But that being said, the one thing that Joe Brady did somehow bring back, and whether or not this had to do with Joe Brady or just the Bills feeling the pressure, is kind of like the vibes came back. So, right, it's an intangible thing that I cannot put my finger on. I can't tell you why it's happening, but you see a different Josh Allen. You see that swagger. And one thing that really kind of unleashed him was Joe Brady saying, yeah, run the ball. Like, we're going to run the ball. We're going to do our version of the tush push. We're going to do things like that we need to do to win football games because we know that Josh is a freak and can do that. So as far as Joe Brady goes, yeah, I mean, I'm happy with him right now. I'm not saying that means I 100% want him on the Bills to be the Bills OC next season. I don't know yet. I think they should do some investigation this offseason, see if there's anyone else out there that looks like they could kind of fill the role better than Brady. But at the end of the day, if Brady did come back next year, assuming the Bills win 1 or 2 playoff games, yeah, I think I could say I'm happy with what Joe Brady's done so far.
Yeah, I think, and you've seen Eric and Anthony talk about this in the film room. You've seen kind of the points made from a lot of people that have been watching, the film guys when it comes to how Brady game plans and how he kind of sticks to what he thinks will work, but also knows when to pivot. And I've said that multiple times on this show. That's a big point of emphasis that I think matters when you're talking about going into the playoffs too, because again, those in-game adjustments, the way that you could see that a matchup is not working, or maybe you have to change things with how you're defending or how teams are defending Josh and how you have to fight back by maybe bleeding more on your run in the direction of the run, whatever it may be. Those things matter to me. And I feel like that is the difference when you have someone like Ken Dorsey versus Joe Brady, where last year, Ken Dorsey dialed it up and got the explosive plays going. But when teams started snuffing it out, like the Bengals did, it didn't feel like they had a way out. It didn't feel like they had a way to survive. And a part of that, too, was talent on the offensive line, talent in the running back room, like the early emergence of James Cook, not really getting there yet. But a part of that, too, I felt was a really heavy reliance on one thing versus trying to transition into something that could work. And with Joe Brady, I feel like you're not meeting the Bengals again, but should you meet the Chiefs or should you meet, Miami somehow, or you end up in an AFC championship game with the Ravens, which is what, I want, because that would be awesome, as, scary of a matchup as that might be. You need an OC that knows how to do that, especially against some of these stingy defenses like this weekend, even without the TJ Watt being on that line. Yeah, they're still tough. And I want an OC that has proven that he can recognize how a team is defending Josh Allen. Maybe they're selling out for, too high and they know that he's going to throw deep, so they can't throw deep. Or maybe they're trying to take the middle of the field away and force him to work the boundary. Like, having Brady makes me feel a bit more comfortable with how they'll pivot there. And I'm really excited to watch him going forward. And I'm really pleased with how he's taken over, even though it hasn't always been perfect, but nothing ever is in this cold world we live in. So I'm going to ask you just any final thoughts on the regular season, anything else you want to say. And actually, before you do, I gotta throw this comment back up, because this is one of the funniest comments I've ever gotten on this show. Buffalo does need better strip clubs, though. Just saying. Sorry if I'm behind. Pat, you're never behind. Don't worry. I love this comment. Thank you for your input. I truly appreciate that. But sorry. Final thoughts on the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, there was a ton of adversity this year. Some of it self-inflicted, right? Like, I've praised Sean McDermott a lot already on this show, but there were issues this year with him. Obviously, the Denver Broncos game was kind of my biggest gripe I think I've ever had with Sean McDermott. When there was 12 men on the field, I started questioning if he was capable of being a defensive coordinator and a head coach at the same time, because that's just a blunder that you cannot make. And he was a gigantic part of why that happened. And there's other issues throughout the year, right? Like the Patriots driving down the field with us. Hell, the Giants even driving down the field on us. Luckily, we've kind of pulled out that game. But it's a season full of adversity, both self-inflicted and outside inflicted, let's say. And the Bills still found a way. So I think a lot of people deserve credit, including McDermott, including Josh Allen, who at times hasn't played great, but he continues to do the things that you need to do in these critical and important games, like the game against the Dolphins, where he wasn't phenomenal. But at the end of the game, when he needed to make a play, he made a play. Whereas the Dolphins quarterback, who we'll get into a little bit later, he didn't make the play you need to. So that separates the great from the good, or the elite from the good even. And I think the Bills, kind of going into the playoffs on this 5-run game, have solidified themselves as one of the great teams in the NFL. Now, I think still you have a team like the Ravens and the 49ers, who are elite teams. I think they are better than the Bills, but that doesn't mean that the Bills can't beat them. It just means that those are really difficult matchups if the Bills are lucky enough to play either of those teams.
It just means you're going to have to work harder if you end up in a matchup with either of them, because they're talented at every phase. And I think we are too, but they are talented at every single position. It's really insane. But yeah, I think my final thoughts on the regular season, to just piggyback off what you said, I just want to stress, like, I'm not absolving Sean McDermott of any of the blame of what we've pinned on him, right? The 12 men is inexcusable. It's just that cannot happen. And I think that those moments from this regular season do have to be taken with you when you evaluate how this team will perform in the playoffs. Unless they win a Super Bowl, then I can forgive everything because the Super Bowl is all I care about. But, you have to remember those moments and understand that McDermott's not perfect. And we're not trying to pretend that he is either. They did go 5-0 down the stretch, but also going 5-0 down the stretch was a requirement because of some of the mistakes that he made, some of the mistakes that Josh Allen made down the stretch. But I also think, furthering your Josh Allen point too, we're not here without him. And I can say all these things. I can criticize him, on weeks past about his play. He's the NFL touchdown leader. He's still racked up over 4,000 yards. We do not get to this point without Josh Allen. And I never want to sound like I'm not grateful for him. He has truly, it even had in a year that really wasn't his best, still came through in the moment, still walked off the field with the lead so many times. The Eagles game, the Broncos game, the first Patriot game, the Giant game, all these comebacks that he mounted that fell short because of defensive collapses. Even though he had a hand in why it was so close, he still gets his job done. And really, I look at the quarterbacks that are going into the playoffs in both sides, and the only two that I could say, with my chest puffed out, that I would want for certain, obviously Mahomes, because he's won 2 rings, I have to say it, and Josh Allen. It's a thing where I just know that despite all the flaws of this quarterback, despite his decision-making, which is not the best in the NFL, if you watch that Miami game, it's still someone who just puts so much effort and intensity into the game, someone that will throw a pick and get right back out there and throw it down the field and get, this deliberate 30-yard deep shot that you were like, wow, I can't believe he just made that throw. Against the Dolphins, that back foot throw to Diggs that went, I think 40 yards or something like that. Wild. Absolutely insane. And this is the thing, is we live and die with Josh. I never excuse him for his mistakes. Cause again, and I think someone just brought up, is that T-Dobbs right here? Yeah. Wide open end zone touchdowns in the red zone are rare. They have to be caught if the ball hits you square in the hands. I think he's talking about James Cook, which I do agree with. James Cook has to clean up his drops. 100% T-Dobbs. You're absolutely correct on that. Can't drop wide open passes. But for Allen, some of the woes in the red zone got to be cleaned up. Some things have to be cleaned up. We all know it. But I still think that you live and die with Josh, and this is the type of quarterback you need going into the playoffs. I'm very happy to have him. I'm happy that McDermott pulled it together, and I am happy that the Buffalo Bills are the 2023 AFC East champions. It is a beautiful thing. I will say it. I wore the polo to work today. I was telling him before the show started because I was so gassed up over just how excited I was. But we're going to pivot our topic. But before I do, I have to ask you one question. You know what question I'm about to ask, but I still got to ask it. Do you like fantasy football?
I love fantasy football. Yes, sir.
Oh, that's a tremendous thing. I am so happy that you said that because I want to tell you about Underdog Fantasy. And mainly, I want to tell you about Underdog Fantasy's Pick'em game. Just pick higher or lower on your favorite or least favorite player stats, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. And remember, the playoffs are coming. This is a good time to be doing that because you're going to be finding some interesting things that you may want to go ahead and try out. Underdog keeps it super simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. You pick between 2 and 5 players to fill out your Pick'em entry, get every pick right, and take home some cold, hard cash. Use the code COVER1 and get your first deposit doubled up to $500 by Underdog. And thank you so much to Underdog for being a partner and sponsor of Cover One. Now, let's get a little more specific in our matchup talk, because before we move forward to the playoff preview, I know people want to revel in this matchup against Miami. Normally we try to close the book a bit quickly on matchups because we know you don't want to talk about the same thing, but this is the Dolphins. We just beat the Dolphins. We just took the AFC East from the Dolphins. I know every single one of you watching right now was either on Twitter and interacted with the Dolphins fan, has a Dolphins fan in your life, knows of a Dolphins fan, has probably seen a dolphin at the aquarium or maybe in a movie, and you just loathed them. You were just angry because of how much junk they were talking. That dolphin eking at the aquarium was probably telling you that they're going to dethrone the Bills in the AFC East this year. But in typical Dolphin fashion, they bite more than they can chew. They fall off. And the Buffalo Bills steal the division from them again in a 21-14 victory at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, Florida. Uber, please enlighten me on your thoughts on this game because it feels pretty damn good to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it almost, once the Dolphins dropped the game to the Titans, this almost felt inevitable because this is what the Dolphins do. They collapse in December and January. They just aren't a very good football team at that point in time. And the wild thing is they have just insane levels of talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where they should always be competing. They should always be winning, especially at home where they're not contending with bad weather. They're typically playing in very good weather, low winds, hot, warm, whatever. The fact that they could only put up 14 points against the Bills team that by the end of the game was missing Matt Milano, Trey White, Rasul Douglas, and Tyrell Dodson, like this was an absolute dud by the Dolphins. And the Bills, again, didn't play perfect, but they found a way to win. So as far as I'm concerned, this is the Bills division until one of these guys actually takes a real shot at beating the Bills to win the East.
I'm so glad you made that final point. I went on a little rant in one of the spaces yesterday, but I do think it needs to be said because the Miami Dolphins of this year and a lot of their fans, not everybody. I want to stress when I say their fans, I'm not talking about all fans. There are plenty of excellent, very insightful, very well-versed Miami fans. I have a few Miami fans in my family that are very cool. Like I don't hate every Miami fan. I'm not trying to make it sound like that. So please don't, if you're a nice Miami fan and we've had you join the show before, just know this is not directed to you. This is directed towards someone who self-proclaimed themselves as division champions before the season started. Until you do it, until you have a reason to say that you did it because you have tangible evidence from the season prior, I will pick against you. I will pick against you every single time. Miami has proven one thing this year, that they struggle against, two things. They struggle against good teams and they struggle against good defenses. Now, in the offseason, Dolphins and Jets both made very good acquisitions, both had some pretty good drafts, and they got better on paper. And they deserve all the credit in the world for making moves they need to make. They made these moves because they needed to catch up to Buffalo, who was winning the division consistently, which is why when I picked the division winner, I picked the Buffalo Bills because they've done it lately, because their coach and quarterback were the same, because they too drafted and signed free agents. But a lot of people wanted to say that they were going to win the division, that Miami had it. It was Miami's time to shine. But until you do it consistently, ESPN just went off for some reason. It does that. Until you do it consistently, I am going to pick against you. And this season, I picked against you. And guess what happened? You proved that it was the right decision to pick against you because you didn't prove anything. What you proved is you are a speed team, a finesse team, a team that has a lot of talent. I think Tua is a good quarterback. I think Tyreek Hill is one of the best receivers in the league. I think your defense played a lot better. But you blew it and you did not win the division. And the team that has gotten the better of you every season since Josh Allen has gotten in the league, since 2 times, beat you again and took the division. So I am saying this because this needs to be said when we talk about any people proclaiming themselves as champions. And this goes for fans of the AFC West too. Until you do it consistently, I am going to pick against you. And Miami, I will pick against you again when this season comes up. So that is my statement on that. And as far as the game goes, I'm sorry for that long rant. I will say this. I'm very pleased with Josh Allen turning it around after a very ugly start to the game. And I'm even more pleased with Sean McDermott's defense. Do you agree that those are probably the 2 stars of the show, or do you have anyone else?
I mean, Deontay Hardy's a big part of it too,
yes.
right?
But sorry, I forgot to mention Hardy.
No, I mean, my thing with I'm just going to start with Josh here, right? Because the 2 interceptions and the fumble loss suck because turning the ball over 3 times in one game is never good. And it's very hard to overcome that. That being said, I actually think he played a really good football game. It just was a couple boneheaded mistakes, but he also accounted for over 400 yards himself. And at points was literally the Bills' entire offense because their run game really wasn't working outside of Josh Allen running the ball. I left that game more confident in Josh than I think I have been maybe since the Eagles game and at any other point this season because he was making throws that made me say, that's Josh Allen. That's the real Josh Allen. And the Eli Apple interception that can be debated until the cows come home. The other one I could argue was an arm punt. Granted, Josh did miss an initial read, and then the fumble that he lost was Christian Wilkins just making a freakish play. But at the end of the day, Josh actually looked really good. And then to your point, the defense, yeah, man, the defense to me was the star of the game. Deontay Hardy, very important. Josh had an incredible game, but the defense is what won the Bills that game. To give up only 14 points to a team with Tyreek Hill and arguably 2 MVP candidates at one point this season, Tyreek Hill and Tua Tagovailoa and A-Chain. Like, I get they have injuries and all that, but that defense stood on their freaking heads on Sunday and essentially won the Bills the division.
Yes, 100%. They deserve all the credit in the world. That, if Miami's clicking on all cylinders in that game, it could get ugly fast, or just at least instill far more urgency into the offense, considering that they weren't finishing their drives. They scored 1 touchdown and 4 red zone trips. Like, it was tough to watch them kind of mimic some of the uglier games of the season where they got down the field but couldn't wrap it up. And I think part of that was Josh Allen, decision-making woes, whether it was the interception to Gabe in the end zone, whether it was the throw to Ty Johnson, which I guess I could find the logic in doing it because he did have a lot of field and you think he's fast enough to creep in, but you got to go for the end zone shot on that. And the arm punt, which probably didn't need to happen if you could see your read through, but you didn't. Those are the things that I think, again, I talk about he needs to clean up. I want to see him clean that up. But second half, Josh, you're 100% right. Like, second half Josh Allen was the Josh Allen we know and love. That's when he got a fire underneath him, when you could see his eyes are wide and he's hitting these insane throws. It wasn't like check down, check down, check down. He did take them from time to time, but I could think about that deep shot to Shakir where it was just a ball straight up on the money, right into the palms of his hands, right on the boundary, where I was like, oh, he's locked in. Like I have no doubt he's not missing another throw in this game, or he's at the very least going to be accurate in all of his passes. Like, that is the Josh I need to see. That was awesome. But again, it doesn't get there without the defense. And I said this to you before the show. I didn't forget. Don't worry. But that game, listen, you have to think that after watching that game and the way some of the things unfolded, that cosmic intervention is real. Because that Trent Sherfield touchdown, let's be honest, we all held our breath as soon as that ball got passed, and I see it go in the air, and I'm thinking, oh, man, is he about to throw another one just on like a good D-line play? And it somehow manages to take the trajectory and angle to land at a spot where Trent Sherfield can keep his feet in the end zone and score a touchdown. And when you see something like that happen, you almost wonder, is this cosmic intervention? And you kind of feel like, oh, my God, that's the moment that's going to tell me that the Bills might win this game. That's what it felt like. And lo and behold, you get to the second half. It's 14-7. You're kind of like, what's going to give? What's taking so long? And then Deontay Hardy, who has not returned anything for a touchdown this year, decides, hey, even though this is at the 4, I'm taking this out because I think I got the angle. Takes it for a touchdown, and they never look back from there. Those are just the kinds of things that you see in a game, and you're just like, I cannot believe it. But like, even though it's ugly, I still felt like in the bottom of my heart we were winning that game. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, I mean, the second the punt return, touchdown happened, I felt like the Bills were going to win this game. But as a Bills fan, right, I think both of us can agree. Even at the end of the game, we're like, no, this game's not over. Like, there's still a chance, but it felt like the Bills were going to win that game. And massive credit to Deontay Hardy, who also earned a $250,000 contract incentive by returning that, because it upped his punt return average, which is a wild incentive to get when he hasn't been great all year. He just turns it around on 1 punt return. Yeah, man, like, the Bills don't typically get the balls to fall that way, especially the one into Trent Sherfield's hand, or the lane to open up for Deontay Hardy, or a bunch of other things that happen. But I think to a point, right, you make your own luck in situations like this. I just looked up one thing. I was counting. Josh hit 15 of 16 throws in the second half. I didn't realize that until just now. He had 1 incompletion. So in a way, you make your own luck when your quarterback's dominating. You make your own luck when Dane Jackson makes an open field tackle. I forgot who he tackled, just short of the line, and the Dolphins didn't go for it on 4th and inches. And then the
Very
result
nice.
is the Bills get the ball back, and then the Bills go for it on 4th and inches at their own 35-yard line. Credit to Sean McDermott for that decision. Essentially, the Bills made their own luck after a game where a lot of lucky things happened for them. But at the end of the day, you still got to play good football, and the Bills essentially played good football the entire second half.
Yeah, and again, I just want to compliment them one more time because a big part of the reason that we can celebrate really is that defensive performance. And the defensive performance of some of your more unsung heroes like Dane Jackson, like Taylor Rapp, those two guys in the back end who played pretty good coverage, but also came up with huge plays when you needed them. When you talk about the open field tackle or one of the pass breakups, and you talk about Rapp's interception, those are the moments that you just need when you sign these guys. Obviously, Dane Jackson comes on a minimum deal. You get Taylor Rapp for a 1-year contract. Trent Sherfield came up huge for you on offense, and Deontay Hardy came up huge for you on special teams. All things that, we were hoping to get from them when we signed them in free agency. During the course of the year, you're not seeing it, but in this game, they came through. And I have to give a huge compliment to them. I have to give a huge compliment to this defense. I have to give a huge compliment to second half Josh Allen. That is the reason that you are currently sitting at the top of your division and going into the playoffs as the 2 seed and not anything lower. So I am appreciative of their performances. Uber, do you have any final thoughts before we move on to our playoff preview?
Yeah, I think you made a really good point there in the unsung heroes. And I thought I saw a couple interviews, right? Rasul Douglas had the interview after the game where he said, I think I could have gone, but Dane came up to me and said, I got you. I got you. So Dane goes out there and plays a great game, a literal great game from Dane Jackson.
Yep.
The same exact conversation happened between Deion Dawkins and Ryan Vandemark, who had to come in and play 8 snaps at left tackle, guarding Josh Allen's blind side. Vandemark says to Deion Dawkins, I got you. I would bet you a similar conversation happened between Tyrell Dodson and Balin Spector,
Yes,
a
yes.
7th-round pick last year, who went in and had a really, really good football game. 7th-round picks don't do that, especially guys that played 6 snaps all year. So credit to the depth that the Bills have, because without these talented depth pieces, I don't think that the Bills, one, have a chance to win the division in week 18, nor do they win the division in week 18. So to all of them, that's a massive amount of credit. And it's a massive part of the culture, right? That these players could go to the starters and say, I got you. Don't worry. I'll do my job. I just think that that's a really incredible thing that the Buffalo Bills have kind of built, that relationship between these athletes.
And that's got to make you feel really good going into the playoffs, because you're talking about your depth right now stepping up in the place of your starters if they got hurt or weren't performing well. Again, Dane Jackson, Balin Spector, he looked good, man. Like, not
Yeah,
just
he
like,
did.
he's filling in and he's doing his best. It's fine. He was shooting gaps with so much speed and intensity that I was like, dude, it looks like he's been playing here all season. And like, I think back to training camp where they were talking about him and like how they were kind of hyping him up. And I was like, is this guy going to be our middle linebacker? And then Bernard takes the job, but Spector's drive never went away. He obviously got bested, and I think Bernard's more suited for that role, and they felt that Dotson could just, as a veteran presence, fill in for Milano. But Spector filled in for him really well, and I think that's a testament to Babich, McDermott, but also just him as a player, and makes me feel pretty comfortable in him if we need him in this playoff game. And then another person, because we talked about Hardy, Sherfield, we talked about Dane Jackson, Taylor Rapp, but Leonard Fournette. Like, it wasn't the cleanest game from him, but like those moments where you're getting stuffed at the line, but you're falling forward for 3 yards matter so much to me, because the difference between 2nd and 10 and, 2nd and 7 is ultimately what you might need if you're trying to convert 3rd downs and you need that little bit of extra distance. Like, those are the things that I wanted to see. And I felt like, the pivot to Latavius Murray, or from Latavius Murray to Fournette, made a lot of sense. I wanted to see it just because I felt like Fournette had a lot of juice and it was time for him to get more involved. And even though he didn't have the flashiest numbers, I saw just like effort. I saw productivity. I saw him get wrapped up and still pivot forward and just get through the line and create opportunity, even if it wasn't anything exponential. And that's what I want to see. And man, I hope Ty Johnson's okay this weekend, because having those two behind James Cook, I think, is a really formidable running back group, even if it's not the flashiest of names. And I think we're really going to see a very productive rushing attack from the Bills in the playoffs with those guys. So I just want to give credit to Fournette too, and Spector to further your point, because Spector did play a really solid game to fill in for Dotson. And, I want Dotson healthy because I think he's been playing really well, but I feel pretty comfortable with Spector at the helm. So that's really my final thoughts on it. I'm very pleased again with the result. It's super cool that we could sit here and talk about them getting that much needed win, and that we don't have to, hope, for a good outcome on a road game. Like the Bills win this weekend and they have another home game and potentially a third if they can win that and the Ravens drop it. So great position to be in. I'm glad they went down there, took care of business. The job is not done because we have a playoff game to talk about, everybody. And before we do, I'm going to ask you to do two things. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do, if you are watching us, and I appreciate you watching, is please, again, click the like button. Share this video with your friends. If you have friends who are Bills fans who are looking for some Bills content or a podcast to check out, please send them the YouTube link or check us out on all of Cover One streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Google, wherever you get your podcast, we are there. So please, if you could do me a favor and do that, we would truly appreciate it. And the second thing I am going to ask you to do is listen to our good friends, Greg and Aaron, as they tell you about the One Pass. Gentlemen, what have you got for us today?
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
Yes, become one today. We cannot tell you how much your subscription means to us. It is an unquantifiable amount of importance to our network that you subscribe to that One Pass. That is how we are able to access all of the resources that we can use to find statistics, any sort of data that we need for these programs, to be able to watch the film that we watch, to be able to do so many things for you, our audience, who we truly appreciate. So if you are not a One Pass member, I implore you to please sign up. It is in the description below. And it is something that you will have an absolute blast with, because you get access to the premium Slack channel where you could find a bunch of like-minded Bills fans such as yourself, engage in discourse, have a wonderful discussion, post memes, whatever you're feeling. There is a thread for you. Thank you all so much again for tuning into this week's episode of Under Review. And please, again, hit that like button. And I want to give a quick shout out right here to Pedro. I just changed to another account and liked again. That's real, man. I want to thank you so much, man. That's super cool. That's like the kind of effort we appreciate on the show. And T-Dobbs, I appreciate you as well for this kind word. Let's all hit the like button. Please do that. All right. Enough of me ranting. Just kidding. You're going to get way more of that. But Uber, let's talk about the playoff game. The Buffalo Bills are hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that we just learned, one, is starting Mason Rudolph, and two, will not have TJ Watt as he suffered a knee injury. Talk to me about this matchup, some of the key things you're looking for, and your expectations for this game.
Yeah, so anybody that's been following me on Twitter for basically this entire season knows how high I was on the Pittsburgh Steelers heading into the season. I thought they would win the AFC North. Obviously, they didn't, so I was wrong there. I never thought they were a really good football team, though. And I still don't think they're a really good football team. I think they're good enough to steal a game from someone in the playoffs. Hopefully that's not the Bills. But that being said, losing TJ Watt was essentially the entire reason I had any confidence in the Steelers, because he's that good. Like, this is a legit first ballot Hall of Famer. Mm-hmm. If he can continue the pace he's playing at right now, we could be talking about him as one of the greatest to ever do it, which is wild that I'm considering thinking he might be better than his brother. Granted, his brother had some of the most dominant years I've ever watched a football player have. He's not playing. That's a massive loss, and I don't really know how you overcome that, especially when we're still waiting to see if Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to play, who's their other game changer on defense. He's saying he's going to play, but as far as I know, it hasn't been confirmed either way. That means the rest of that defense just has a bunch of guys on there. There's some good ones still. Alex Highsmith is a very good pass rusher. Cameron Hayward, little long in the tooth at this point in his career, but still can make plays here and there. I just don't know if they have the talent on the defensive side of the ball to keep up with the Bills. As for the other side of the ball, Mason Rudolph is the exact type of quarterback that Sean McDermott eats for breakfast every morning. Like, he is exactly what Sean McDermott wants to face, because he can set Mason Rudolph up to make multiple mistakes. I just can't fathom a world where Mason Rudolph destroys the Bills. And I know we've seen Mac Jones do it. I know we saw Bailey Zappi kind of come into his own at the end of that game, or Easton Stick put together some numbers. In a game like this in Buffalo, Sean McDermott's going to have his way with Mason Rudolph. I'm not guaranteeing a Bills victory because I don't think you can guarantee a victory in the NFL. Yeah, the Bills better win this football game. They literally better win this football game.
Yeah, better win is definitely my sentiment because, I mean, again, you're going up against a team right now that is 26th in offensive EPA per play. Again, like the whole year you were seeing them in that kind of bind of Matt Canada hell and then Kenny Pickett not really producing. Like you're facing a team third string quarterback, and you're facing them for a reason. And granted, they've had a bit of a resurgence because Mason Rudolph remembered, hey, we drafted this really talented receiver in George Pickens. I'm going to throw him the ball. He did. They had success. They absolutely demolished the Bengals. They eke out a win against Baltimore. Granted, wasn't playing many, if not any of their starters on defense, but that's a team that you don't take lightly just for their pedigree. Again, Mike Tomlin is an excellent coach. He's deserved all the credit in the world for pulling this team to a playoff appearance, despite how bad their offense was for the first half of the year. But again, it's so crucial that this team doesn't have TJ Watt, who I believe of their, if I recall correctly, 46 sacks, he accounted for 20 of them. So something, I might have the number wrong, but I know it was a vast majority. So it's something to be said when you don't have your best edge rusher on your team in this matchup. And the Steelers are currently 1-10 when they don't have TJ Watt in the lineup, which is a significant metric. That's a large sample size, first and foremost, to have 11 games without your star edge rusher. It's another when you've only won one of those games. And I unfortunately did not see who they beat when they didn't have TJ Watt. I'm going to probably imagine it wasn't a team that was as formidable as a playoff Chiefs or a playoff Bills or anything like that.
I think it was the Bills.
Really?
I think
without
it was
TJ
the
Watt?
Bills. It was the season opener in 2021. I think that's the game they won.
Oh, I got to look that up. Hey, comment
I'm
section.
looking at it right now. Oh, no. He did play that game. Okay, he played that game. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yes. All right, cool. I was going to say, man, that would have been bad, but that would have definitely shaken me up a little bit here live. But not having him is a big blow. And I mean, they have a lot of other talent. Like I really like Joey Porter Jr. I really like the other members of their D-line. I think their D-line depth is very underrated. They drafted Keanu Benton and Nick Airbag, and both have been contributors for them. Keanu Benton is a monster, and he will be even bigger of a monster as the years go on. But again, like, I could say the same thing about last year's matchup where the team didn't have TJ Watt, but still had Minkah Fitzpatrick, still had other members of their D-line, and we smoked them. I mean, just genuinely was a boat race. And granted, that was Kenny Pickett in rookie season, but also Kenny Pickett was their promising young quarterback. And now they've pivoted to a third stringer who, again, you said it, Sean McDermott defends them, well, at least for the most part. I know, again, a couple quarterbacks over the past few weeks have had success, but you also got to think, again, the offense wasn't really pulling its weight in those games. The Patriot game, they had 4 turnovers in the first half, but the game was close because the offense wasn't finishing drives. Like, Sean McDermott will have a game plan. And again, you got to look at, because I know you brought up the first New England game, but this defense is, again, even though a little banged up after Miami, still for the most part quite healthy. Their pass rush is healthy. Ed Oliver is playing the best ball of his career. Daquan Jones is back gearing up for a playoff run. You still have Leonard Floyd playing at a high tick with Greg Rousseau across from him. Like, these are talented D linemen that I still think have a lot of depth to them, and they're productive. And I think when you talk about the difference of this game, I really think that while Mason Rudolph has had success, I think the Bills' pass defense is going to have a lot of success against him. What worries me, and I'm going to ask you about this more so, is the Bills' rushing defense against Pittsburgh. And now, granted, we just went to Miami. They had a great first half. The second half, we shut their rush down. But, Najee Harris has some juice and some power. Jalen Warren burned us in the preseason. He's got a lot of speed. Like, talk to me about your thoughts on that matchup and what you're thinking about their running attack.
Yeah, and real quick, I looked it up. The Steelers beat the Buccaneers, Tom Brady Buccaneers, in 2022 without TJ Watt, which is just really odd that happened. But yeah. Talking about the rushing attack, right? So if we go back to the Dolphins game that we just played, the difficulty in defending the Dolphins is you have to focus on Tyreek Hill and Tua's ability to push the ball downfield while also focusing on the run game and stopping A-Chain, and when Mostert's healthy, stopping Mostert. When you're playing the Steelers, you want them to throw the ball. Like, that's your goal. Like, let Mason Rudolph put the ball in the air. Trust the Bills' ability to stop him and find a way to make Mason Rudolph be the player that has to beat you, because the Steelers are a better running team than passing team at this point. And Najee Harris hasn't been great. Jaylen Warren does scare me a little bit, but I think you see the Bills essentially stack the box and say, yeah, go ahead, Mason. If you want to throw the ball downfield, we still have Micah Hyde back there and Jordan Poyer, who might not be the players they once were, but they're smart enough to be able to read a quarterback like Mason Rudolph and attack his routes at certain points in time. I think you might see actually some 3 linebacker sets from the Bills, and maybe they take a safety out, or maybe you see Jordan Poyer in the box a lot more than we have in prior weeks, because that's where they're going to try to stop Pittsburgh. And that's where Pittsburgh's going to try to win this game, because there might be snow. Looking at the weather right now, 50% chance of snow at 1 o'clock, and it'll be in the 20s, and the wind is supposed to be around 23 miles an hour, which is not easy to throw in that for people not named Josh Allen.
And I did a little look up of it. So right now for EPA per rush for the whole season, they ranked 19th. So not a lot of success, but they can break them off. And, when you're comparing it to Miami, I do think Miami is far more of a dynamic rushing attack. And I think that you will have success, but I'm more worried about, again, like you talked about, the conditions, the snow, the wind. Like, if the Bills offense isn't able to really get ahead because they're being trumped by weather, then do the Steelers have a fighting chance to land some blows with their rushing attack? Now, what I do think is on the flip side of that, Mason Rudolph has to throw in that same wind. And, we saw once upon a time, a Patriots team throw 3 times in the wind. And granted, they still won that game, but they put up 10 points. I think this is a different outcome. I think the Buffalo Bills have a much more capable rushing attack as well. And I think that's going to lend itself well, despite the Steelers being really top 10 in pretty much like every defensive metric, because of course they are. But again, that's top 10 with TJ Watt, and not removing him from the equation. And I just think that when you lose that edge and you're talking about having someone supplement that, I'm sure they're going to get pressure on Josh. I'm sure you'll see the likes of Highsmith or Hayward or Airbig or someone get through and eventually create some pressure. One thing that we also have to talk about in this matchup, and this is something I'd say even if TJ Watt was in, and Uber, I think you know where I'm going with this as far as Josh Allen, is he is the lowest percentage of sack rate for quarterback in the league this year. He evades pressure better than anybody. He's able at getting out of a pocket better than anybody. And if you let that man get out of the pocket, I worry for you and your safety. Now, granted, decision-making has plagued Josh. The explosive plays are down, but playoff Josh, I feel like, can turn it on. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, just kind of Josh Allen now as we pivot to that part of this conversation, like thoughts on him in this matchup and what he's got to do.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was on Twitter. It might have been Brett Coleman or Nate Tice, one of those types of guys, tweeted out yesterday, like, we talk about Josh's turnovers enough. We need to talk more about his ability to avoid sacks, because he's the best in the entire shots. Okay. Yeah. Best in the NFL at that. He's literally the best in the NFL at that. He can evade pressure like no quarterback we've essentially ever seen. He can take hits like Cam Newton would or Ben Roethlisberger would, and he, to a point, I'm not saying he has the same agility as Lamar Jackson, not even close, but he does have some agility when he gets to the edge, and his speed is deceptively good. I think that plays a massive role this week. So like you said, the Steelers are going to get some pressure. Despite the Bills having a really, really good offensive line this year, they're still going to get to Josh at points. It's when Josh breaks away from that, and now he's in the open field against the linebackers that the Steelers currently have. Cole Holcomb on IR, Quan Alexander on IR. So they're essentially playing 2 backups to a point. Granted, Quan wasn't really the starter. But that being said, they're not really deep there. They're not really strong at linebackers. So you're going to have some lesser linebackers chasing Josh Allen to the edge, or lesser safeties, assuming Minka isn't fully healthy. And then that leaves those tight ends open. That leaves Dawson Knox open. That leaves Dalton Kincaid open. That leaves James Cook open, leaking out of the backfield. I think this is a game where you see players like that really step up, because they don't need Stephon Diggs or Khalil Shakir necessarily to have big games, or Gabe Davis, even if he's healthy. So I think that's actually a really good point, that Josh's ability to evade pressure is going to play big into not just this game, but if the Bills can win this and move on and say play the Chiefs next week or play the Browns next week, they're going to have some evasion from their quarterback. If they go on and play the Ravens in an AFC Championship game, Josh is going to have to evade pressure because those Ravens players are always getting to the quarterback. So massive part of Allen's game, massive part of the next few games for Buffalo.
And you brought up a really good point, something I wanted to get to as well with Allen as well as the rest of the offense, but that's the tight ends matching up on the linebackers. And Mike Tomlin himself talked about how that's a problem with their defense and how Josh Allen, the Bills offense, relies on tight ends and how that could be problematic. I mean, I said this last week about the Miami game, and, I talked about it with Luca and Bill's chat on Friday, but we talked about it in the staff chat about how Miami struggled against tight ends. If Pittsburgh's doing the same thing, man, this is Kincaid's time to shine, and also Dawson Knox. Get him involved, work the middle of the field with them, try to manipulate if those linebackers are playing man or even zone, because I feel like we have polished enough route running in Dalton Kincaid and the physicality from both tight ends to really exploit a matchup if you're not playing with your best linebackers. And one thing I want to ask you about is, we talked about Gabe Davis very briefly. Gabe Davis, we don't know if he's ready to go yet. We'll find out more tomorrow. But in the event that Gabe goes down and isn't able to play in this game, what's your pivot? How do you think this offense kind of attacks? Because I have a theory of what they might do, but I want to hear what you think.
So I think the weather could factor into that, right? Like if the wind is a little lower than we think it's going to be, and maybe the precipitation's not happening, maybe it's a little bit warmer, you could go 12 personnel with Khalil Shakir and Stephon Diggs on the outside, and I think you'd be just fine with that. In the event the Bills are really trying to pound the rock this week, it's Trent Sherfield. Like, that's the player that you're going to have out there, because you want that blocking receiver, which Trent Sherfield is. He isn't the same quality blocker that Gabe Davis is, but he has a pedigree that is a blocking receiver. So you can put him out there with Dalton Kincaid, with Dawson Knox, and you can just run the ball essentially down the Steelers' throats. I think that's where they're going to kind of look, and those are the packages you're going to see. So I think you'll see Shakir and Sherfield to a point kind of split those snaps that Gabe's been getting if Gabe can't go, because I think they really, really like what Shakir's giving them right now. I really, really like what Shakir's giving them right now. But at the same time, you need to run the ball. And if you're going to run the ball, Trent Sherfield's your better blocker than Shakir.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's part of it for me, because I do think that Sherfield and Shakira should be recruited as a bigger part of this game plan besides blocking duty. But I think it's going to be more tactical, middle of the field assault. Like, again, when Gabe went down against Miami, you were seeing more recruitment of Sherfield working the slot a bit and Shakir in those quick situations, and then having him hybrid go over the middle, but also go downfield. I want more of that, like 100%. Shakir has earned his keep in this offense. He has earned it. He's earned it multiple times, but now I think it's to a point where he needs to be a staple in the progressions, someone that you're not really taking off the field too much and relying on his route running. Because I do think that if you don't have the vertical presence of Gabe Davis to draw off coverage from Stephon Diggs, then you're going to have a harder time unless you earn the respect of coverage, which I think you can get with Khalil Shakir. And having that threat of someone who can go up, but now also work the middle in addition to your tight ends, in addition to Trent Sherfield, I think the Bills have always wanted to carry that explosive element. They haven't been as good at it, but that's what really they're best at with their two best receivers, is having Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis work up and trying to draw people off. And now I feel like you have kind of this opportunity to really go quick, go up tempo, really work that middle with these guys that are capable of doing it, because Sherfield and Shakir are good middle of the field route runners, not Cole Beasley level in my opinion, but good enough, in addition to the tight ends that the Steelers struggle with. So if Gabe can't go, that's how I foresee them attacking them, is really kind of less reliance on vertical shots until we really truly earn it, and more reliance on ground and pound with James Cook, Latavius, I think it'll be Leonard Fournette, but maybe Latavius Murray, Ty Johnson if he's good to go, and then work the middle and just eat away at them. Because, again, I think even the Bills going up by like 10-14 is enough. Like, just given the state of the Steelers offense, given what they're going to be going into, given how the Bills pass defense is played, because we know their rush defense hasn't been as good, but when you take a big lead, you got to get off of it. I think 14-point spread could genuinely be enough for the Bills to just separate themselves and win this game. And that's why I think being able to take the time with that ground and pound and work the middle is something that could really help you win this game.
Yeah, I like what you said there, 10, 14 points, right? I think this is a game where what would make me comfortable, and I think what would play into the Bills' favor is hopping out to that really quick lead, like get out to a 2-touchdown lead. If you do that, this Steelers team is not built to play from behind. They'd have to put the ball in Mason Rudolph's hands, which I think is a recipe for disaster. So if the Bills can strike, like go back to the Dolphins playoff game last year, right? The Bills struck quick and then Josh started being stupid. This year, Josh knowing that, my assumption is if Josh and this offense can strike quick, hop out to that 2-score lead, Josh is going to kind of reel it in a little bit and say, I don't need to try to hit that deep ball right now. We can just meticulate the ball down the field and easily win this game. A 14-point lead, let's say, by the end of the first quarter, and I'm going to be pretty comfortable for the rest of the game. Not saying I'm going to be ready to say the Bills are going to win the football game at that point, because when there's 1 second left in the game, if the Bills are up by 50 points, I still have like a belief that the Bills are somehow going to lose that game. But I do think it plays into the Bills' favor if they can hop out to a 2-score lead, obviously, but in this matchup, way more considerably effective.
And I wouldn't be comfortable up by 14. Like, I won't be comfortable until the clock hits 0 in any of these damn games. You're winning 100 points. Okay, maybe I'll be comfortable by then. But if you're talking 14, I won't be comfortable. I just feel like, and this isn't a knock on like George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, like Deontay Johnson, who have all proven that they're capable, right? Like, I think the Steelers have a myriad of weapons you have to respect. I think George Pickens is a star. I think Freiermuth is an incredibly underrated tight end who's very serviceable, especially when you need someone in the flat or like someone to get you yards after the catch. Deontay Johnson, he's had drop issues, but he's also had, you know, some really reliable catches for that offense and has been kind of a center point and is a very good route runner. Like, they can't be slept on either. I just view it as, when I look at this Bills defense attacking Mason Rudolph, attacking their offense, an offense that has had consistent issues getting points, you know, a kind of an identity crisis on offense, not really implementing too many things that are wild. I think that that's where this game is, again, won or lost for Buffalo. And if you're flustering Mason Rudolph and taking away the rhythm he can possibly get, as well as adverse weather that can make that worse, then I view that as like, you're going to look at their running attack as the next thing that they're going to lean on, which I think they're already going to. And that's where you got to shut him down. And if you can, then I think, you know, we're talking about, again, a type of game where the Bills just need to do enough to separate themselves, like a 10-14 spread, where they could, in theory, hold on to that, even if the Steelers have a few field goals or what it might be. So I can't really think of anything else. I guess I'll ask you this before we sign off for the night, but your biggest matchup in this game, like what is the number one thing you are looking at that you're saying this is the determining factor in a Bills win or a Bills, I won't even say it.
Yeah, this is a cop out or not really a fair answer, but I think the biggest matchup I'm looking at this game is Josh Allen versus Josh Allen. That's what I'm going to be monitoring. Is Josh can't make multiple critical mistakes. If Josh plays the way that we know he's capable of, I don't think that there's a single team in the NFL I'm not confident the Bills can beat. Going into this playoff stretch, right? Hopefully the Bills win 4 more games. If they win 4 more games, I'm going to be happy as can be. I think Josh can single-handedly win them 4 games. I think Josh can single-handedly lose them 1 game. When you're playing a team like the Steelers, my hope is that Josh realizes I don't need to beat them myself. I can rely on the rest of the team, the defense. I can rely on James Cook, Leonard Fournette, Khalil Shakir, Stephon Diggs, all these guys. I can rely on them this week to win this game for us. I just need to be the guy that's there delivering the ball and making the right decisions. Where in the future, say they're playing the Ravens, I want full sugar rush Josh Allen because I know that he needs to be on the top of his game for the Bills to win that game. He doesn't need to be on the top of his game this week. He just needs to be good enough and smart enough to beat a team like the Steelers.
You know, I'm actually going to agree with that, and I think that's the matchup for me. It's got to be Josh Allen and against his own decision making. It's got to be a clean game, man. I mean, I think back to last year's wild card game where you had the Skylar Thompson Dolphins having no business being in that game, but being in it because of your recklessness, because of careless mistakes, because of an over-reliance on vertical passing when you didn't even need to do it because you had a different read that was shorter on the field, but you wanted to air it out. I need to see calm from Josh Allen. I need to see Josh Allen poised in the pocket, trusting what he got. That second half effort against Miami where he felt like he was delivering the ball. He said it himself, ball coming out of his hand, the best it's been. I need more of that. I need him to just hit those quick shots to get him in rhythm, be able to play up tempo, feel comfortable. I think that's really the key to success is not only Josh Allen making the right decisions, but this offense playing a bit faster because again, I think, and I've heard some great points about this week from other people like in the spaces or on other shows, but it's true. I think Josh Allen really does play his best ball when he doesn't have to think as much and he could just go off of his rhythm, go off of his body language and his muscle memory of just playing fast and just not have to let a defense get into your head, not having the opportunity to give him time to show anything disguised. And you can't do this all game, but when you're talking about possibly being the difference of, 2 scores being enough, play fast, play hot. Throw that ball quickly. Scheme up some short routes. Let's line up Diggs in the slot and just get weird and, throw some slants or maybe just try to decoy him and have some more screens with Shakir where you're getting him downfield. Like these are the things that I want to see them set up for Josh so that Josh doesn't have to make those mistakes. And then when the time comes where, you're playing with the lead, you can just kind of keep him going and keep him comfortable and he's not as pressed. And like, we know Josh plays great ball when his back's against the wall, but play ahead. Like give me another Raiders game. Give me another Dolphins game first time. Give me another maybe not Dolphins because that still was scary for half a game. Give me another Commanders game. Like give me those games where you're just lax because Josh is cooking and you feel like he's confident because he's not feeling flustered. If you can get that from him in this game, I do think that they're going to end up winning it and probably winning it big, but I won't sleep on Pittsburgh. I really won't. Mike Tomlin coaches a very competitive team with a good defense. Even without TJ Watt, they're still going to be tough. You got to respect them. Don't look past them. But whatever you do, don't look past them. But I do think that the Bills have earned the 2 seed, are playing hot, have played ugly ball and gotten ugly wins, which I think absolutely matters when you're going into the playoffs. And I think that they're a team that just has so much momentum right now that they're going to find a way to win it, even if they don't play their best game. So,
yeah. Last thing that I have, something feels this season like it did in 2021. Like it just seems similar. Like the Bills went on a 4-game win streak to end that season and kind of take the division to a point away from the Patriots, but they weren't playing the best football in the world. They were beating teams like the Falcons in sloppy ways, the Panthers in sloppy ways, and then they, beat the Patriots in a big important divisional game. And then they went into the playoffs and played a team that had a really good defense and okay offense with an inexperienced quarterback, but a solid run game. It sounds really, really similar to this game. There's something about this. Maybe it's just the vibes. Maybe it's, me feeling myself after that, win against the Dolphins. But I could see Josh Allen and the Bills going out on Sunday at 1:00 and throwing up a similar game to what they did against the Patriots in 2020, technically 2022, right? Because it was in January.
Yeah.
I'm not sleeping on the Steelers. The Steelers could win this game. The Bills are the better team by a fairly significant margin. And when you have a quarterback like Josh who's saying, I'm throwing the ball better right now than I have all season, he's poised and ready to have one of those breakout type games. And the playoffs is exactly where Josh Allen would do that.
This is why you have him. This is why they call him the Winter Soldier. This is why Josh Allen has earned a lot of respect in this league, despite, having decision-making woes. It's because he's a big game quarterback. You saw it this past Sunday. You've seen it numerous times. And obviously the job's not done yet, and he hasn't gotten that Lombardi yet. And I think he is capable of doing it. And this is the type of game that you win and put under your belt because you got a home game in front of your fans against a team, that a lot of their media has apparently been bad-mouthing you. You got to go out there and prove it. And I think Josh, plays with a different kind of level of intensity again when these moments come around. The Bengals game was tough to watch. I understand that. I do think there were a lot of circumstances in that game, including him, that went wrong. I think that this team is, offensively healthy, ready to go. Even without Gabe, I still think they have a good game plan potentially if they want to run it. I think they have a lot of talent that they could spread the ball around to. I think defensively they've been clicking. They feel a lot more confident. And as our good friend right here, Bob, says, just win, baby. That's all I want. If it's the playoffs now, I don't give a damn about stats. I don't give a damn about anything. You could win 3-0. Win the game, move on. Let's get that damn Super Bowl. That is my message to Bills Mafia. It's my message to the Bills, and I hope we have some fun this Sunday. So That's going to do it for us, everybody. That is the end of this week's episode of Under Review. We are so sad to be signing off, as this was an absolute blast. But if you are on YouTube right now, or even Facebook, or anything that we stream on, don't turn it off, because there's another awesome show coming on right after us, and that's Disguise Coverage, hosted by Mr. Anthony Proaska, who is going to have another amazing episode for all of you. So please stick around and check that out. However, for Under Review, we are signing off, and I want to thank you very much again, Uber, for joining me. Please tell these lovely people where they can find you, what you got going on, and what you're doing.
Yeah, you can find me at Uber Hansen on Twitter. I have 2 things coming out this week, one tomorrow morning. I created a quarterback stat a couple years ago called Cuber. I'm actually writing up like kind of a detailed post of that I'll be posting on the NFL subreddit tomorrow. I will also be tweeting out a link to that. And then on Friday, which is more important for Bills fans, I'm doing my matchup preview, Steelers versus Bills. I'll be a big, long, 3,000 word behemoth of an article that you can read regardless of what you're doing, trying to wait until the Bills kick off at 1:00 on Sunday.
Yes. And if you have not had the opportunity to check out his articles, please do. Like, it's not just writing. It's not just words. It's information. It's data. It's everything you need to know about these matchups. And he does a lot of hard work to get you just this really good content. So please do him a favor and check those out. And also check out their show, Cover One Roundup, every Monday night.
That's true too.
It is also very entertaining with this co-host, David Fox. But everybody, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Under Review. I appreciate you. If you could please do me a favor again before you go and drop a like on this video, share it. If you are listening to us after the fact, first, I'm sorry for blowing your eardrums out in the beginning of this episode by yelling into my microphone. I was excited, but I do appreciate your listen as well. We will be back next week, hopefully, with a fun episode to celebrate, because I would certainly like this playoff trade to keep rolling all the way into February, and I want the Bills to get that damn trophy. But for Uber Hansen, my name is Joe DeRosa. You can find me on Twitter at @show_DeRosa. This has been this week's episode of Under Review. Thank you all again so much. Let's go Buffalo. Go Bills. We will see you soon.